2020 happened. It's gone. I don't think much of us will regret it. But some films still came out. Some of them I even saw in a theater. And I haven't seen enough to make a full top 10 list, but here are 7 films that I found were, for me, the best films of 2020. Number 7 is Boys State, directed by Jesse Moss and Amanda McBain. Boys State is a documentary that follows a rather odd experiment where an organization called the American Legion takes 1,000 boys and 1,000 girls from every state, brings them to their state capital, and basically organizes this Model UN, mock democracy type week where all these kids have to form political parties, elect officials, establish a political platform. And so the documentary filmmakers followed the Boys State election in Texas in 2018. And I suppose what's really fascinating is about watching these very young teenagers that are fully invested in the political process. And, you know, it's chock full of the theatrics and the sort of the wheeling and dealing, the low blows and the circus-like nature of real politics, except it's make-believe. Although the film, I suppose, does try to follow it in an objective manner, it does end up being sort of a horrific indictment of the American political system, which is this insider show with not much substance behind it. And I think it really reveals, if it needed to be revealed, how much of a stupid popularity contest elections are, or at least the way they end up being within the U.S. electoral system and with a lot of democratic electoral systems. And just how little substance there actually is, which is really revealed by the fact that these are kids with not much at stake. And so they can be really candid in front of the camera in terms of all of the dirty tactics they want to utilize. My number 6 is Dark Waters, directed by Todd Haynes. Dark Waters is a sort of biography of the last 20 years of lawyer Rob Billitt, who as of right now is still fighting DuPont, the massive American chemical company, for polluting the water of inhabitants of this small area of West Virginia, and essentially causing irreparable health issues and damages. I think what really elevates Dark Waters from your general run-of-the-mill message movie is Todd Haynes' direction, who's able to integrate a lot of genre aspects into the film. Not only the sort of detective and legal procedural elements, but also elements from horror films, and is able to craft scenes that are genuinely horrific and terrifying. Ruffalo also, who apparently is the reason behind the creation of the film and is the one who went to get Todd Haynes to direct the film, is also wonderful in his portrayal of this modern American hero who's not a hero because he's smarter or handsomer or can fight. He's a hero because he is relentless and obsessive and is willing to sacrifice and put everything on the line for what is right. My number 5 is Dick Johnson is Dead, directed by Kirsten Johnson. Dick Johnson is Kirsten Johnson's father, and he is diagnosed early in the film with Alzheimer's or some other form of dementia, but he's going to start to lose his memory and start to degrade physically and mentally. And this is exactly what his wife and Kirsten's mother suffered through in the late stages of her life. With most of these types of very personal, almost home movie kind of documentaries, it's more about capturing the great moments and the last instances of let's say, consciousness of a loved one in order to celebrate his life. And while there's some of that there, I think what's great is because of Kirsten Johnson's approach and also her upbringing by Dick Johnson, who also happens to be a therapist. The film devolves into this Freudian exploration of what it means to cope with the death of your parents. There are these incredible scenes where Kirsten Johnson gets to in a very over the top, hilarious, and morbid way, essentially kill her father and direct these fictitious scenes where he dies in these very elaborate and gory ways. And of course, what makes it so charming and beautiful is the relationship that she has with her father. Dick Johnson himself is a very loving, open-minded, caring, very, very generous person. One thing that really stands out in my mind is how he's not so much afraid that he's going to lose his memory, but what concerns him the most is how much of a burden he's going to become for his daughter and his family. And as of right now, I believe he is still alive. I don't know in what state, but this is truly a beautiful, beautiful sort of homage that Kirsten Johnson has created for her father, and just a great film about life, death, the legacy that we leave, and how we cope with the death of loved ones. Number 4 is another political documentary, and that is La Cravate, directed by Étienne Chailloux and Mathias Théry. La Cravate follows a young man who is campaigning for Marine Le Pen's far-right nationalist party, the Front National, during the 2017 presidential campaign. On top of the interesting aspects of just following a political campaign, especially that of the far-right party, notably things like the exploration that it has into the sort of loneliness and the inherent violence of the people that it attracts, but also the party leadership, which kind of like, to go back to Boy State, is filled to the brim with these kind of opportunists where you don't really sense that they have any sort of political motivation or ideology to go into this party, but rather they sense that there is an opportunity because of the way society is changing and because of people's fears to prey on that and to carve out some very successful careers for themselves. Another way the film sort of elevates itself from your just standard run-of-the-mill fly-on-the-wall documentary is the fact that the documentary filmmakers are very concerned about how they control the narrative, and they don't really give the main character, whose political beliefs obviously do not align with the filmmakers at all, and so they kind of render him voiceless by taking these series of interviews that they've done with him and writing themselves a voiceover. And a lot of the documentary is also this main character reading the voiceover that they've written for him and sort of him commenting on that. And again, I feel that gives the film a more interesting discourse than just an interviewee type situation. Number 3 is a miniseries that really came out at the perfect time as the entire world was going into lockdown, and that is The Last Dance, directed by Jason Hare. There are a lot of documentaries about athletes, and most of them are not very good. The Last Dance blows them out of the water. But I think most importantly, over the last 10, 15, 20 years with the advent of the internet, we're getting further and further away from this universal sort of monoculture. Everybody can sort of exist in their little bubble and only watch the films that they want to watch and really only participate in the sort of circles that they want to participate in. And there really aren't these big cultural events that sort of everybody is a part of. I would say over the last few years, maybe the only thing that is really in that realm would have been the Marvel movies and maybe the Star Wars movies. But I mean, those are things that I really don't have that much of an interest in, so that wasn't something I was actively participating in. And this year, because there were none of those films, I suppose Tenet was the closest to what could have been something like that, except that really didn't work out, and Tenet really just sort of fizzled away from public consciousness. But if there's one thing that I think we kind of all, especially people of my age, of my generation, maybe a little bit older, really gravitated towards, and something that monopolized the conversation over several weeks. It was The Last Dance, because it was about an era that we all lived and that we all remembered, because it was about one of the greatest teams in sports history, a team that is almost a brand more than a team at this point. A basketball player who is not just one of the greatest athletes of all time, but a cultural icon. The archival, historical aspect of the documentary is great. It's a great piece of filmmaking in its own right, but it was also part of this larger cultural event that, as we were all on lockdown, locked away in our homes, was just a nice moment to be a part of. So at number 3, it's The Last Dance by Jason Hurr. Number 2 is Sofia Coppola's latest film that was released, I believe, exclusively to Apple Plus, and that is On the Rocks. Rashida Jones plays a writer who's experiencing some pretty serious writer's block, and she's starting to become suspicious of her husband because he's always out working and he's always traveling. She feels like she's losing some of her sexual appeal, or at least he's losing some sexual desire towards her, as at the same time one of his co-workers is this very attractive woman who she feels very threatened by, and so she teams up together with her father, played by Bill Murray, who was an absentee and was a cheater, and who is kind of convincing her that something's up, and so they basically try and spy on her husband. Bill Murray plays her father, and he's, of course, so charming and funny and suave. He is able to make everybody around him, and even his daughter, forget how much of a selfish asshole he actually is, and how much the way that he treated her mother, the way that he was as a man, has conditioned his daughter to act the way that she's acting and be jealous and be suspicious of her husband. It really, really dives into some interesting ideas of what it means to be cool, what it means to be a man, especially in these different ideas of what masculinity and what being a husband is from different generations. So you have the perspective of Bill Murray's generation, and then people who are younger, in this case, the younger husband being played by Marlon Wayans. The film is an absolute delight. Rashida Jones is great. Bill Murray is the most watchable person on planet Earth, and it really wouldn't feel out of place if this was shot in Rome in 1975, and is just a great watch, and one of the rare, really interesting things that are on Apple TV, along with Boys State. And finally, number 1 was actually the first film I saw in 2020. It was released in the US and Canada theatrically at the end of last year, but for us here, it was a Netflix exclusive release, and that is the Safdie Brothers' Uncut Gems. This is the second time that I've put a Safdie Brothers movie on my top film of the year. Their filmmaking speaks to me on a really, really primal level, and their energy and their filmmaking really matches perfectly with Adam Sandler, who gives, one of his best performances ever. He's really great here as this kind of adrenaline junkie. The film explores this idea of addiction in a way that's really interesting. I can't recall a lot of gambling movies that are able to encapsulate the exhilaration that the main character feels when he is winning a bet, where it's really not about the money, it's about this sort of orgasmic release that he gets from winning a bet. And that is ultimately what leads to his downfall, but I think because he goes out on a high, I don't think he really cares. I absolutely adore this movie. I really want to see it again. It's been about a year, so I think right now is the perfect time to revisit it, but that is my number 1 film of the year, the Safdie Brothers' Uncut Gems. So thank you very much for sitting through this video. I would like to wish all of you a very happy 2021. I hope all of you are safe. I hope that none of you have suffered too much from 2020. It's been a very long, very complicated year, full of weirdness and for some people, unfortunately, loss and hardship. I can only hope that this next year brings about much better things for all of you out there. I want to be a lot more active this year, kind of manage my time better. I've been really, really busy, which is lucky, considering people have been out of work and not traveling that much this year, and I've actually been traveling quite a bit and working way too much. So yeah, thank you very much, and hopefully I'll see you soon, and until next time, see ya.